House Hunter. The house sat silently watching the traffic drive by. It had a for sale sign up in its yard. It wouldn't be long now before someone came along. It was old but sturdy. Many people said it had good bones. But it was more than that. The house had character and personality. It had to regulate itself when people came to see it. It shouldn't show too much personality right away. It was big, but located on a busy highway. Back when the house had been built, there was no busy highway. It was a bit of a setback for the house, but it knew, sooner or later, someone would come. With the size of the house, the character it exuded, and the acres of private forest directly behind it, it knew that someone would come. The house also knew how to dampen the highway noise. It had been doing so for years now, and it was an expert at making its tenants believe that it had been re-insulated or soundproofed by someone over the years. There was no explanation for the dampened sound of the highway outside, though. Everyone just assumed the trees and vegetation blocked it out. Inside, cabinets in the kitchen swung open. The basement stairs creaked noisily. Wind whooshed through the attic, even though it was a perfectly still day outside. A rocking chair in the living room rocked quietly back and forth. Upstairs, the sound of small feet running from room to room could be heard, along with faint giggles. The house waited, enjoying the feeling of the spirits trapped inside. As the house waited, a red Jeep pulled into the driveway. A bedraggled man got out of the car and looked around. The driveway was somewhat shielded from the road, so he needn't have worried. The shrubs and brush around the house became subtly fuller and taller, blocking the man from view. He crept up to the front door and tried the handle. There was a lockbox attached to the knob, so he hadn't expected it to be open. He'd expected a fight. Maybe the last realtor had failed to lock up. Or maybe they weren't gone yet. He stuck his head into the house. "Hello? Anyone in here?" he said, trying to sound authoritative. No one answered. He crept into the house, closed and locked the door. He turned and looked around. "Huh, weird," he said. Directly in front of him was a huge staircase. To his right, a large room. To his left, another room with 2 doors. He opted for the left room first. The house was staged for viewings. Inside this room, which the staging company clearly thought of as the office, held a desk and a few bookcases with a few tchotchkes and books on it. Through the room and out the other door was a large open area. There were random cabinets on the wall. This room held a foos table, poker table, and a large leather couch. There was another door here to the front yard, and a weird little alcove across the room. He went to the alcove and found a small closet and a locked door labeled elevator. Back in the gaming room, he followed a long hallway to a bathroom, then to a utility room that must have been behind the stairs. There was no washer and dryer in here, and no way out but the way he came in. He turned around and went back through the hallway, through the game room, through the office, and back to the entry foyer. "What a weird place," he muttered. The house was delighted. It was a quirky thing, and it loved when people noticed. The man went across the entry foyer to the next room. It was a huge bedroom with a glass door. "So much for privacy," he chuckled. The huge bedroom he assumed was the primary suite. It held a large bed with a light sconce on either side. The bathroom was huge with a soaking tub, shower, double sink, walk-in closet, and private toilet. He had a sudden urge to use the toilet, but decided to wait until after he'd explored the rest of this huge place. He had already decided this was where he was going to stay tonight. Maybe he would be able to stay longer. He had been able to check the listing on an app on his phone and saw it had been listed for nearly a month. People weren't into the weird layout, it seemed. There was also a strange feeling in this house. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. It was just strange. Something was off. He left the bedroom suite and ventured up the stairs. They opened to a huge, bright room. The weather outside had been overcast and cloudy, but still this room seemed filled with light. One whole wall was all windows and a door leading out to a balcony. Half of the room was staged as a living area, with the other half presenting as a dining room. The kitchen was to the right of the staircase. He opened the fridge to find food, not spoiled, but new fresh foods. He found food in the pantry, too. "Shit," he muttered. "Is someone doing caretaking here?" he wondered aloud. He could hide and see if anyone stopped by. The kitchen ended around a corner. At the back of the kitchen was a second sink and open shelves. They looked crude and not as finished as the cabinetry you could see from the living room. He guessed this was some sort of butler's pantry area. It creeped him out a bit. Next to the kitchen was another room styled as formal dining, then another weird alcove with a little storage closet and the elevator. There were 3 bedrooms behind the kitchen and another bathroom. All were empty except for one room, which had a mattress on the floor, dressed with sheets and a pillow. Strange that the staging company didn't furnish these bedrooms as well. He walked over to the bed and saw there were no indentations in the pillow. He pulled back the sheets and the fresh smell of dryer sheets greeted his nose. They seemed to be unused. "Well, Reggie," the man said to himself, "guess you found yourself a home for the evening." A floorboard in the living room creaked, startling Reggie. Just an old house making old noises, he thought to himself. He went to the kitchen and got a water bottle out of the fridge, a granola bar from the cupboard, and locked himself in the toilet room of the primary suite. He waited in there just in case a realtor came by with clients to show the house. The house held back its most unique personality traits so as not to scare off dear Reggie before the time was right. It was elated to have a tenant, even if it was a filthy squatter. No one came to the house, and after 9 p.m., Reggie decided it was safe to come out. Most realtors he knew wouldn't show a house after 7 p.m., and any caretaker would have been back before 9 p.m. He knew this from what he thought of as his old life. Back then, he had a wife, kids, a good job, but then everything went sideways when his wife left him and took the kids. He spiraled out of control, drinking too much, and eventually lost his real estate job. Then he lost the house, and since he was unemployed, he couldn't find an apartment or anywhere to live at all. He'd burned all his bridges with his months of drinking and partying. He had no friends or family left that would take him in. So he begged for money, used the money to gas up his car, the one thing he owned, and drive from empty house to stay in for a few days. Reggie left the bathroom and wandered into the bedroom. He pushed on the duvet of the made-up bed. It was a real bed, not just a big box made to look like one. He thought about sleeping down here in a real bed up off the ground in the primary suite of a huge house. He could pretend his life hadn't fallen apart before his eyes. The house delighted in the waves of sadness emanating off this man. Yes, this would be a good one to keep, it thought. Ultimately, Reggie decided to sleep on the mattress upstairs. It was clear the sheets were clean, and if anyone came in the house, he would have time to hide somewhere upstairs before they made it up there. Reggie went upstairs. It was very dark upstairs now, and the floorboards creaked as if someone was walking on them. "Hello?" Reggie whispered. No answer came, of course, because no one was there. Reggie pulled his phone from his front pocket and used the flashlight feature to light a path to the bedroom he had found the mattress in. Something fell and rolled near the elevator door, startling Reggie, who held the light towards the noise. He saw the handle of a broom and a small marble rolling away from the closet. He walked to the broom to replace it and noticed for the first time a little sign above a shelf in the closet. It said laundry chute. Reggie chuckled. He hadn't seen one of these in a while, even though they were pretty handy. He opened the lid and saw the top of the washer. Very handy, he said to himself, and closed the lid. He was just straightening up when he remembered something. He'd seen the laundry room. It was back behind the stairs, and there were no machines in it. He opened the lid again, and there was the back of someone's head. It turned quickly, doing a complete 180, so it now stared up the chute into Reggie's face. The head cracked into a wide smile, and the face began to ascend quickly. Reggie dropped the lid. It slammed down, bounced once, then stayed closed. Reggie waited for the head to emerge, but it never did. He thought about looking again, then dismissed the idea. The house creaked around him. "Maybe I'll just go to bed," Reggie said. He went down the hall, which seemed much darker and longer now the sun had gone down, and turned on the light. Since the bedroom was at the back of the house, which only faced acres of forest, he wasn't worried about alerting people to his presence in the house. If he'd been outside, however, he would have seen he had nothing to worry about. No matter what lights he clicked on, the windows of the house remained dark and still, as if no one was inside. Reggie slept soundly that night. It was the only night he would sleep soundly in the house. The house had big plans for Reggie, and it had no plans for letting the man leave. It had seen him, his whole story, as he had sat eating his tiny dinner of water and a granola bar. It reveled in his mental instability, in his addiction, in his depression. It was just the food the house required. And his fear was so easy to extract. His uncertainty about the laundry room had been delectable enough. Add in the trick with the head in the laundry chute, and his fear was one of the more delicious things the house had experienced. The joy in creating fear in a grown person was something this old house had missed. It had sat for too long, the spirits inside growing weary of spooking nothing and no one at all. It let Reggie have one night of excellent sleep. Scaring a tired person was too easy, and so held none of the flavor of hope that well-rested people had. It was also too easy for the person to write off their experiences as hallucinations or something like that. The last owners of the home, as much as you could own a home like this one, had blamed their experiences on being overworked, overtired, or on one too many glasses of wine. They never admitted that the house's dark history might have something to do with it. In fact, the house couldn't even be sure the previous owners had known about its dark past. They had gotten away after giving the house and its accompanying spirits very little reward for their effort. But that had been better than nothing at all. Reggie was a blessing to this house, an offering. It needed to gain its strength back, and it would do so by slowly devouring Reggie. He wouldn't be allowed to leave, and he would never be found. The house would make sure of that.